One of the biggest lessons I've learned since I started designing board games is that it's not enough to just have some amazing gameplay. You also need to create a great product. In this video, I'm going to explain why. I'm Adam Porter. I'm the designer of the games Pikoko and Doodlerush, Throne, Big Bazaar, Compromat, Zooligans and Quazzle. And in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about product design. When I first started designing games in 2014, I was really excited. I'd found a new interest, something I was good at, and it even had the potential to earn me a little bit of money. I threw myself into it. I was inspired, and I loved to experiment. Inspiration is when a game idea emerges in your head, uninvited. For me, it's often in the early hours of the morning when I know that I've got to get up soon, but I've got a few more minutes before I need to get out of bed. Or it might appear in the shower or on the drive to work. Or maybe it's while I'm playing a game with a friend. Experimentation is where you take an existing game mechanism that you're familiar with and you try and subvert it in some way. Or maybe even take two different mechanisms and merge them together to create something unique. Now, these two approaches seem to be the starting point for at least 90% of all the new designs that I see brought along to game design meetups. But there is a third way, and that's empathy. A product design approach puts the user right at the center of the process from day one. It demands that you know your customer. You understand their needs, their wants, their priorities, their problems. And if you're a freelance designer, you might also need to consider a publisher's desires and business goals and balance them against your users' needs. Product design involves developing all aspects of a product in order to engage your user, to help them meet their goals and to solve their problems. And how do we do this? Well, it's a process called design thinking, and there are 5 steps. The first step in design thinking is understanding the user, empathizing with them. The second step is defining the problems that your user wants to solve. The third step is ideating a solution. Then the fourth step is prototyping. And finally, we go into the 5th step, which is testing. But this is not a linear process. You might go back and forth between these different stages at different times. And different designers are going to approach this whole process in different ways. If we go right back to that first step, understanding, how are we going to do this as board game designers? Well, the first thing is you need to play a lot of games. You need to get out to game groups, and I know that's difficult in the midst of a pandemic, but as soon as it's possible, get out there, play lots of games with lots of different people. Play lots of different styles of games, even things that you wouldn't normally enjoy. You need to experience those things so that you can understand the consumers. You need to know what they want, what they need. You need to have discussions with them. What do they find fun? What do they find boring? What do they find cool? What prevents them having fun? What's missing? What do they need? You need to gather that information together and think about which of the problems they've described to you are important. Which of these problems are surmountable? Which of them inspire you to try and come up with a solution? In game design circles, designers and publishers often talk about creating a great hook. This is a similar concept. A hook is the aspect of your game which brings people in, draws them in, makes them want to play, makes them need to play. But hooks are always discussed at the end of the game design process, when you're pitching to publishers, or maybe when you're trying to sell your product to a consumer. When you define a problem through design thinking, you're essentially bringing the hook back to the very start of the process. Solutions can come about from moments of inspiration, as we've discussed, or from experimentation, or maybe by collaboration with lots of other designers. The important thing is that you keep firmly in your mind those first 2 steps. We need to know who the user is and make sure that we're matching our solutions to the user's problem. And now we're back on a well-trodden path. I've made a whole video about prototyping and I'll link to it above. Your prototype doesn't have to be finished, it doesn't have to be pretty, and it doesn't even have to work. You can just grab some markers, some blank cards, some components that you borrow from games that are on your shelf, as long as you get the thing on the table and you get it played. Once you have a working prototype, the next stage is to test it extensively. And again, I've made a video about playtesting. You want to get this played by as many different people as possible, as many different types of people. Not just people you know, not just people who like you, not just people you like. Get it played by everybody and take on board their feedback, whether it's positive or not. You need to have a thick skin and you need to be adaptable. But most of all, you need to listen. In many years of attending game design meetups, I found that those first two steps of design thinking are often ignored by game designers. Designers are really keen players who have become inspired. They turn up to game meetups with a prototype and they start playtesting. They playtest extensively and they fall in love with their design. They hone it until it's just the way that they like it. At no point in the process have they considered whether there's really a need for such a product and who their end user is and what their problems are. Throne was one of my earliest designs. It came about through experimentation rather than through empathy. I was really hooked on trick-taking games and dice games, and I thought it was exciting to try and put these two things together and create a product that I knew that I would love to play. It took some time to find a publisher. Publishers were intrigued, but they weren't falling over themselves to publish this game. Eventually, when I did secure a contract, it took some time for the game to come to market. And when it did come to market, there was a fairly lackluster response. It didn't sell well and it didn't really capture people's attention in the way that I'd hoped. Now, I love the game, but it turns out the world is not full of people like me. Doodlerush was designed later, but it came out earlier. And this is because when I showed it to publishers, they were quick to act. Brain Games signed the game and they moved to market quickly. North Star Games' Happy Salmon had come out recently. It was a fast, frantic, silly, funny party game that took a couple of minutes to play. I was inspired by it. At trade fairs and conventions, I was seeing people falling about laughing playing this game. They'd go to the demo table, 2 minutes, they'd had their demo, and then they'd go straight to the cash point and they'd purchase their own copy. And it occurred to me that there are no other games around like Happy Salmon. I had identified a need, and I defined the problem as follows. Players would love more silly, frantic, chaotic, funny party games that don't take forever to play. My ideating process started by looking at all the different types of party games out there, and there really aren't that many genres of party game. Drawing pictures is a common activity in these games, but it's always so slow. The game takes ages, and for at least half the time, the majority of the players aren't even involved. They're not drawing and they're not guessing. So my solution to the problem was to consider what would Happy Salmon look like if it was a drawing game. Prototyping wasn't hard. Pencils and paper was all I needed, and within a couple of hours I was playing it in the pub. It also wasn't hard to playtest the game. I could amass huge numbers of playtests in a relatively short period of time because the game only takes 6 minutes to play. It's not a big ask when you're approaching somebody to test your game and you can say you'll be done in 6 minutes whether you like it or not. Brain Games did a great job with the production and Doodlerush sold well. Designers are frequently becoming publishers, self-publishing their own games, and they're becoming aware of the fact that they need to produce a product. There's so many things they need to think about, not just the gameplay. And I would urge you as a designer, even if you're planning to license your game to a publisher, to start thinking about these things early. Product design incorporates many things, but these are some of the considerations that I would suggest you keep in your mind from the very earliest stages of creating your board game. Now, I'm going to be covering all of these topics and more over coming videos over the next few weeks. In this video, I've shown you some clips of some board games which I think are not just great games, but also fantastic products. I'd love to see your suggestions for games which are also great products in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel so you can be kept up to date on any upcoming content, and I'll see you next time.